What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. Today's video is going to be about Stephen Greer. And the question is Stephen Greer right about ETs being non-hostile and benevolent? Which is something that he has preached as long as I've ever followed him. And just to begin, Stephen Greer is somebody that I have followed for a long time. In fact, it's somebody that I discovered back in 2014. And I always had not that I don't now, but especially when I first discovered him and for quite some time thereafter, I had an immense amount of admiration for what he was doing, and it seemed as though he's doing everything for the greater good, to spread the word, to spread correct information, to be a spark for disclosure in terms of getting rid of secrecy on this planet, and basically enabling us to have access as a population to all of these sequestered technologies and to basically usher us into potentially a golden era. So let me start by saying that. But one of the things that I want to focus on in this video is his really, really staunch stance on ETs. Just there's no such thing as a negative ET. There's no way that they would want to harm us or hurt us in any way, because it's just preposterous according to his sense of logic. And I want to go through some of the arguments that he repeats in many, many interviews, and I want to break them down because I think he speaks in absolutes as far as I'm concerned, unless I've missed some important clips. I don't think I have. I've listened to so many of his interviews. But he speaks in absolutes from the standpoint of, they're all benevolent. None of them want to harm us or do anything negative to us. And that usually on its face is inherently problematic to speak in these types of absolutes where, they're absolutely all positive versus a mixture, or there could be some could be bad. And I'm going to show some clips where he talks about that specifically in some of the interviews that I've clipped. And the other thing is, a lot of what he claims to be the broader purpose of the ETs in terms of their intervention, now wanting to reach out to us and contact us, it doesn't really add up or make sense on a grander scale, in the sense that I can't really discern a purpose in the context of life as we know it, civilizations, like where he constantly says that the ETs want to raise us up and effectively help us help ourselves to evolve and grow and be benevolent. But to what end? And where is the discussion? And maybe he intentionally doesn't want to talk about this stuff, but where's the discussion about these lives are so quick? They're over in a blink of an eye, and then we move out. Is this for our spiritual evolution, just for humanity in this meat suit? Or is this for our spiritual evolution? Where's the discussion of that? Because these lives come and go in an instant. And so what is the ultimate end goal? And it seems to me that buried within a lot of the things that he talked about is effectively a new age mindset. He doesn't exactly say this, but it feels like he is, without getting into it, basically saying that life and civilization is a school. It's this whole idea that we're here to learn, and that's the whole purpose of the show. And I think it's something that people should pay attention to, because he's been a huge voice and he's done so many good things. I'm not trying to take that away from him, but I do think there's potentially a dangerous message in everything that he discusses, because underpinning his work is this idea that it's all positive, it's all love out there. And I really think that blends into a new age perspective of in the afterlife, or anything that might be connecting with us in the spiritual realm is also all positive, all good. And there's nothing that we have to be mindful of. And so if he's somebody that has also opened your eyes about ETs and extraterrestrials like he did for me, I think it's important to take some of the things that he talks about in terms of the potential motives of ETs, or how everything fits together, with a grain of salt, because I do think he might be incorrect. And I'm going to show you going through a number of clips where I think he's wrong, where I think he's making really faulty, sweeping assumptions. And at the end, I'm going to show you where all this comes from, in my opinion. Where this entire idea, this new age type of philosophy that is underpinning a lot of what he says, where it comes from. I found a clip. I found a really good clip. We're going to save that to the very end. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into some of the clips here. So this is him, again, just so adamant that they, the grand they, all of the ETs out there, all of it, whether it's, because that seems to encapsulate ETs, biological ETs, spiritual or interdimensional entities, they are not hostile, and he will not sway from this. And I think I know why. There is maybe a reasonable reason, but why so absolute? How can you be so absolute? Isn't that irresponsible? Okay, let's listen.
Over, those began to be weaponized, and they realized, hey, there are these craft that are from here. Let's see if we can knock some down.
Yeah.
And reverse engineer them. The problem is, doing so is an act of war because we're targeting them. Now, civilizations that are 10 to the 6th to 10 to the 8th years more advanced.
Let me pause this real quick. He's saying that downing the crafts is an act of war. And then he's talking about these civilizations that are very much more advanced than us. It really used to make sense when he said this, and I thought, okay, wow, yeah, they must be very benevolent because we're downing their crafts and they're not attacking us back. But really a better analogy, especially when he talks about the mass divide in terms of technological advancement, that's like it when we go on an African safari and an elephant charges one of the cars or the jeeps and there's some casualties. Is that a declaration of war? No, we're just like, hey, the elephant got angry and got mad, and that's nature, and we take that risk when we go in there. Isn't that a much better analogy? So again, this is one of many examples that I just think don't add up, don't make sense under even the lightest bit of scrutiny. But he continues.
We are 100,000 to 10 million years more advanced. If they were hostile, we would have been done. August 1945, over, folks. Hey, kids, you're done, right?
What another grand assumption. Jesse is going to challenge him in a second on this, but I wish he would have challenged him a little bit more specifically, not about enslaving us. But anyways, so he always says if they were hostile, and it doesn't even have to be hostile, it just can be a nefarious purpose, or not even a nefarious purpose, a purpose like we talk about, like we are confronted with on this in this community and on this channel all the time. There is an ulterior motive. It's not necessarily hostility, but it's to use us for a resource, namely loosh, to farm us. So it's the same thing as saying, oh, well, hey, if we were hostile, like we're not going around annihilating farms with cows on them. You know what I mean? Because we're not exactly hostile, but we're not also looking out for the best interest of cattle or other livestock that we're using to feed ourselves, or if we're harvesting honey from beehives. We're not hostile towards the beehives, but we still have a purpose for them that they're helping us, and we're keeping them around for that purpose, you see, but that doesn't necessarily imply hostility. So it's just this crazy faulty assumption that he's just like, well, no, they have to be all good because they could destroy us. Well, we could destroy all the bees, we could destroy all the cattle, but we're not. This doesn't mean that we just want all the best for them, or we're not. Again, hostile is not even the right word. It's just that they have a motive and they have a purpose that may have nothing to do with our well-being or benefit. You want to call that hostile, you want to call it something else, whatever. But the point is I think it's important to recognize that it doesn't have to be, well, they could destroy us, so therefore they must be, everything is for our benefit. That's just such a, man, it's just such an oversimplification. And I really do think it's a dangerous way to look at it. And then also look here, when Jesse pushes back just a little bit, he gets so upset.
They're not. I know this from having had contact, and everyone I know who's been on a crash retrieval team like Jake, who's had a close encounter with the consciousness of those beings, they're not.
Well, the bad ones might not want to destroy us. They might want to enslave us. Or mine.
Oh, you're so brainwashed.
I'm just saying. I'm just hypothesizing. I don't know.
You look at too much nonsense, man. I mean, look, if they none of that could be done with the flick of a switch if they wanted to turn this planet into a automaton planet or whatever. I mean,
what do you think?
I mean, the technologies are so advanced.
Okay, so again, he's saying if they wanted to enslave us, so he harps on that particular point. But what about Bob Monroe? What about this idea that there is loosh? What about all the remote viewing accounts? What about the pre-birth memories? What about the visions from a lot of people who have astral traveled and they see the mechanisms, the extraction of energy? Where is that in the discussion or the analysis of Stephen Greer? I mean, he's somebody that has dove into things that are once upon a time were laughed at, now they're not. But why is he stopping short of all these other accounts and just dismissing them on a grand scale and saying, no, absolutely not, or they could do whatever they want to us? Because what about, and he even mentions that in one of the interviews, I'm not sure I clipped it, but what about this idea of the law of free will? You can't just impose your will upon other entities or beings without repercussions down the line. Hence why we see a lot of the things that are being done to us or the way we're being manipulated. It's shown to us, and this we've talked about, people have talked about this over and over. It's again to adhere in some cosmic sense to the laws of free will. So I don't think it's just as simple as, well, they could have destroyed us, therefore they are not hostile, or they could have enslaved us in a blink of an eye. What about the fact that they're extracting a resource from us? Same thing. We could exert our will on all these animals and make them dance around or do whatever we want, but we're not doing that because the way it's structured right now, the way these systems are set up, it's serving our purposes, and it's serving our purposes quite nicely. Anyway, so this is one of the examples where I think he's just really off base, and this is furthering this narrative. Really, it's a new age narrative. Oh, the other thing he mentioned too is, well, every encounter I've ever had, they've all been beautiful and kind and loving. And that's fair, but that's the same thing that we question in the NDEs. Okay, we're going to get back to NDEs at the very end. You're going to see how this all connects, but it's the same thing. Oh, well, all the NDEs are beautiful and loving, and they come back and tell us to love one another. And sure, certainly, but what about the potential, the possibility that those are part of the manipulation system, and those are, it's again, if it's done for manipulative purposes, how can you take that at face value, especially if it's there for the purpose of preserving the system? So those ET contacts could be the same thing. There's not questioning it. Now, I can't speak from experience. Maybe for him, it felt so raw and real. I made this point about Betty Guadagno. She may look at me, somebody who's questioning this stuff, and say, well, you never experienced it. You have no idea what you're talking about. That's fair. He could say potentially the same thing, but I'm not saying this in isolation. I'm saying this on the shoulders of so many other folks that have gone out, that have ventured into the astral, or that have remote viewed and seen these types of manipulations happening behind the scenes. So I'm not just opining or questioning out of absolute thin air. I think there's a lot of things that these folks that want to only look at what's being projected or given to them, only want to look at this beautiful presentation of what is reality. I think they should dive a little deeper and listen to these other accounts. I think they're worthwhile. And it's not like these folks are closed off to things that are, you know what I mean, that are outside of the normal sphere of information. I mean, that's the area where they live and they reside. So why not just look at some of these things from Bob Monroe or others? I think it could be a really valuable perspective. Okay, moving on. And by the way, I do want to say, I'm not just trying to attack Stephen Greer here. I think part of the reason why he's so against even acknowledging any sort of potential nefarious intent behind the ETs or spiritual entities or whatnot is because I do believe that he thinks that potential fear is going to be used against us one day, and so he pushes really hard against it for us, so that this fear or doubt can't be weaponized into a hoax alien attack. So I'm not saying it's necessarily coming from a terrible place, but I do think it's dangerous to push this, because even though he doesn't exactly make spirituality, really the nature of reality, I shouldn't even call it spirituality, but even though he doesn't make NDEs and all this stuff his main focal point, he's pushing this new age ideology through his work. And it kind of takes away from all the great work that he's doing, I think. Anyways, okay, now moving on. This is another point that he brings up all the time. Well, advanced civilizations just simply can't be hostile, because if they were hostile, these advanced civilizations would have destroyed themselves and they wouldn't even exist. It's like, huh? Okay, listen for yourself.
And I think civilizations that have survived this sort of crazy time we're in and have made it through the nuclear threshold and the transdimensional threshold and become peaceful. One of the reasons why I don't think they're hostile is that if you have that consciousness that humans have, you're going to destroy yourself before you get out of your solar system. Look at us.
We're
On the brink of World War III with Russia and China. If you don't evolve a certain level of peaceful consciousness. So I always tell people we have a lot of problems, but the root of it is very, not religious. The root of it is social, spiritual, conscious evolution. Because if we don't evolve to a certain level of that consciousness, of peace, and seeing the oneness of life here and out there, there's no future for humanity, because we're not using just muskets and bows and arrows, or even whatever. Now we have weapons of mass destruction that can destroy the planet, and in these covert programs they have technologies way beyond a hydrogen bomb that are supercharged quantum potential scalar type weapons. So you really can't go forward as a people, and I think that other civilizations have passed this way before, and if they survived that threshold, or maybe they crashed and came back out of it, they've learned a very big lesson.
I mean, it's a beautiful sentiment that any advanced civilization must be all benevolent and all peaceful, otherwise they would destroy themselves, and so we can just assume that they're all peaceful and benevolent, and that's a wonderful thing to think. But what a strange assumption to build this entire argument upon, that, well, if they weren't, then they just destroyed themselves. What? Like, that doesn't really make any sense. In fact, if you would grow technologically and intellectually as well, I'm sure you could find ways to still pursue whatever technological growth you might want, or power or domination or whatever, in more controlled ways, or find ways to keep your society intact while still unleashing a lot of negativity or war or whatnot on other civilizations. I don't see how that de facto goes. It's just isn't that such a weak assumption to just say, well, they would just get blown up? And then he points it back to us. I mean, look at what happens to us. We're on the brink of World War III. First of all, we haven't destroyed ourselves, but even if we do, that doesn't de facto mean that every civilization that advances to this position and still is service to self as opposed to service to others is going to automatically destroy themselves. And this is I think it's just such a faulty assumption that he builds so much of this argument around. And again, we're going to see where it stems from at the very end. That's the last excerpt that I've saved. I really think a lot of where his mindset and his ideologies are coming from, I think there might be a problem. We're going to get to that in a minute. What Stephen Greer thinks is that the ETs are all here, all of them, not trying to harm us, but to warn us that we're going down the wrong path. Let's listen to what he has to say here.
Standing that they never have done anything hostile against us. They have warned us. They're here to warn.
This isn't to clarify.
What an absolute statement. They have never done anything hostile. I don't even understand how you could say something like that. We have not recorded a hostile act or a hostile thing. But again, you could look at, I know I'm making an analogy here, but how could you say something like that? Maybe you don't even know what hostile is. In the same way as you're raising a herd of cattle, you could look at everything the farmer's doing, feeding, watering on a daily basis. How can you think anything bad? Oh yeah, every so often a cattle goes with the farmer and they never come back, but maybe he's shipping them off to somewhere amazing, because every time he comes out here, he feeds us and he gives us water. This guy's amazing. We'd be gone if it wasn't for him. This is purely benevolent. He's never done a thing that we've seen, anything negative whatsoever. You get what I'm saying? So he's just looking at a small sliver of experiences that he's seen or recounted. By the way, he's obviously ignoring a lot of things that other people have talked about. So I don't know how he picks and chooses, but he's looking at that thin slice and therefore just saying, yep, therefore it's only positive, it's only good, it's only benevolent, everything that they're doing to us. But let's let the clip keep playing.
We're not talking warning. If you do this, we will crack down on you. They're trying to wake us up so that we don't knock ourselves out.
Yeah, because they know that this has happened before on other planets, and even on this Earth, apparently, where certain
go back to the
level of
Vedas.
civilization, yes, they look at the Vedas, where it reaches a certain level of technology, but the society has not evolved spiritually to where that level of high technology can coexist peacefully with, in a way that is only used for peaceful purposes. So to the extent that humans have this proclivity to take every technology and turn it into a weapon, this is our Achilles heel. This is very, very dangerous. So the ETs are trying to get us to understand that this is not the path to beyond. The path to beyond is that of not only world peace, but universal peace. Because world peace would have been great in 1917 or 18 at the end of World War I. We're at a point now where we're being actively contacted by advanced civilizations all over the world. And so now we have to begin to think universally, not just globally. And that's a big leap, because a lot of people are still stuck in the 1800s. But we're at a point now where we're going to have to very quickly understand, and this may be one of the benefits of this whole disclosure, that we're not alone in the universe, and we have to begin to view ourselves not only as denizens of this planet, but denizens of the whole cosmos, the whole cosmic culture and cosmic.
The logic doesn't really add up. First of all, if he's saying that, hey, well, now we have to really watch ourselves universally, not just globally, because we could even potentially be a threat to these larger civilizations. When you juxtapose that to what he said earlier, where, oh no, of course they're not hostile because they could destroy us in a second. So if they could destroy us in a second and we're just meaningless in terms of wanting to dominate us, then why is there so much concern? I don't know. Maybe he has an explanation. Maybe he's thinking that our technology is growing exponentially right now. I don't know exactly, but that doesn't really seem to add up. But the other question is, when you take away the spiritual component, when you take away the fact that these are temporary vehicles, these are just meat suits, but our souls, our spirits, our essence is what's immortal and what's maybe potentially changing or growing. What I don't really get the point of what he's talking about here. They want our civilization to grow and use technology and be peaceful, but to what end? So then the civilization grows up, we come out, we join this larger community, but then again, individually, each of us individually, independently, we experience these lives, and then we pass on. Like, what is the larger purpose of all of this? He may have an answer. It's probably a new age belief of, hey, well, life is a school and we're just trying to get on track, I guess. But I just don't see the framework that he's been discussing for the longest time of they just want us to evolve and go to this new level of peace and tranquility. To me, that doesn't make as much sense as opposed to the narrative that we've been discussing for the longest time on this channel, which is, in fact, this reality has been commandeered. It's made to be chaotic and made to be crazy because it ends up producing the right levels of loosh, the right levels of emotional output that is then being harvested and used to power certain things or even power the simulation that we're in itself. So that explanation, the way he describes how everything kind of fits together, I don't know, to me, it just doesn't add up. Maybe he would, if I sat down with him, he'd speak differently and he'd be able to explain it and tie it all up together and even connect it to the immortality of our souls and our existence. But I just can't see how it all wraps together, not just in this light, but on the broader scale. That's just me. Next, can there be good ones or bad ones? He shoots this down. He just shoots it down. He says, oh, like, this is crazy. And we're just looking at it through a human lens, a human perspective. Why? Why can't there be good ones and bad? All right, let's check this out.
Extraterrestrial civilizations. People say that just like the rest of us, there can be good ones and bad ones. And I'm not buying it, Stephen.
Well, that's an anthropocentric projection, is what that's called. So what that means is that anthropocentric, it's a human-centered projection onto civilizations that are hundreds of thousands to millions of years more developed than we are. Obviously, they're traveling interstellar quite competently and have been for thousands of years. And so we are viewing, it's this old Vedic saying, the world is as you are. So if we as a people are still mired in racism and conflict and us versus them and we're going to project that on anything we don't understand or anything that's new. And therefore, if it's new and we don't understand it, it has got to be a threat. This is the default position of the psychology of our conditioning as humans, having lived thousands of years in a state of racism, tribalism, warfare, misogyny, one group against another, gay versus straight, all this stuff. And I think that that's the problem with that, is that there's no objective evidence at all that any of these civilizations are a threat. Now, what there is, and this can be exploited by the intelligence community and has been, these civilizations are not necessarily happy with the course of human civilization. Okay, which any thinking person wouldn't be. I mean, if you're conscious at all, then you're seeing global warming and fires and biosphere collapse and endless war. Who's going to be happy with that, right? So, I mean, so these civilizations are rightly very concerned about how humans have not made the right choices in the last 100 years. For example, 100 years ago, we could have chosen to allow the Tesla-type free energy technologies to come out so the world would have no pollution and no poverty before I was born. And I'm 66 now, no spring chicken. So the issue then becomes, or spring rooster.
Thank you. I was thinking of him.
And so what I tell people is that those are choices. This is we have free will, the mystery of free will, along with our destiny, but we've made some very bad choices. Now, what I tell people is that 100 years of various mistakes can be corrected very quickly.
So when we talk about this anthropocentric, if I'm pronouncing that right, anthropocentric perspective, he's just saying, what, we have it all wrong, and that's what accounts for it, and therefore to think that there's bad ones is crazy. Well, also the likelihood that there's literally no bad ones, that's such an improbability that even, let's say, generally you could have the larger goals or objectives of all of these ETs, let's just say for argument's sake, is positive, but of course there could be people that are defecting, there could be entities that are straying from the herd. Right? Why couldn't that be a possibility as opposed to just saying, hey, it's an anthropocentric viewpoint? But what about as above, so below? What about what's happening here could be a projection or a reflection of what's happening above? Isn't that also a possibility? Why is this being just dismissed wholeheartedly? I just don't really get it. Again, you're going to see in a moment where I think all of this comes from. But before we get to that, I just wanted to,
And you know what I've discovered?
I just wanted to point to this next clip because speaking of anthropocentric, a viewpoint, looking at them through the lens of what we see and what we experience here, I feel like he does that right here. Now, in this clip, he goes on and he talks about the fact that, hey, wait a minute, they have to be benevolent because, well, they've stopped nuclear bombs in the past. So if they really wanted to harm us, again, he's going to these extremes. It's either they want to completely annihilate us or they want to be loving and help us all the way from A to Z. So he gives this example. Let's listen to it and then we'll react.
Is on even the guys who've been responsible for targeting and downing extraterrestrial vehicles, the ones from other star systems. There's not a single case where one of those people said that they were hostile, but that they were concerned about our future, what we were doing to this planet, to the Earth, with nuclear weapons that could destroy all life on Earth, etc. And so they're here to sort of help behind the scenes, but not intervene too frontally because they need to see us fix it. When we can't, it's like a child if you ever raise children. I have 4 daughters and 11 grandkids. If every time they stumbled, you'd pick them, grab them, they would never learn to walk, right?
Isn't that an anthropocentric viewpoint right there? He's using his own raising his kids as an analogy. I don't know. I just find that to be a bizarre thing. He doesn't want it applied in one case when it goes against this new agey perspective, but then when it serves him, he's happy to go back to that analogy. I don't know. Something I noticed that seemed a little bit problematic.
So looking at it from a higher order, very advanced civilizations from other star systems know that we have to kind of go through this process and fix it ourselves. But they have intervened behind the scenes in a few cases to avoid nuclear war and mishaps that have happened and to avoid some cosmic strikes from asteroids that would have hit us.
or they are just intervening when the entire system that we are contained in is potentially about to be destroyed. That could be the other possibility, great possibility. So they're intervening when an asteroid could destroy the system, or when, right? Because again, if you look at it akin to a beehive where we're generating honey, we're generating loosh that's being extracted. They don't want the system to be destroyed. But then there's other types of disarray. There's other types of localized wars and chaos on the ground, crime, different things like that. That's going on unchecked all the time. What about that? Well, how does that play into the whole evolution thing? But then in these big cases, they're stopping it, but then they're letting all this other stuff go on. Is that really for us to grow up and learn like we're the children and they're the parent, or we're our own parents? I don't know what the analogy is, but basically, is that really us growing and evolving, or is that us being stuck in this seemingly never-ending cycle all the while, but keeping that system going all the while, outputting this great energetic, great emotional energy that is therefore being extracted? I don't know. To me, not in just pure isolation, but with everything that we've discussed and talked about on this channel, I think that makes a little bit more sense, as opposed to, oh, they're just selective. Like, look how great they are. They're stopping nuclear bombs. They're stopping the whole thing from being destroyed. Well, yeah, maybe it doesn't mean that they just want us to all evolve and grow and be happy and everything is for our benefit. They want us around to utilize what we're outputting. Okay, let's move it along. Now, where does all this come from? Where does this whole New Agey perspective come from Stephen Greer, that I think is the underpinning to everything that he does? He's had an NDE, and he believes the NDE wholeheartedly. He greeted entities, very similar to what Darius Wright talks about in his out-of-body experience. And so I think this is where it comes from. He doesn't talk about this NDE he talks about it, but not in this type of detail in this clip that I found here. But listen to what he says. And I think you'll understand exactly why he has these strong beliefs and harsh lines that he draws in the sand. Like, they're all positive, they're all good. It's just straight up New Age from an NDE.
Long story short, I had a near-death experience one night where I literally left my body. And because I wasn't raised in a religious tradition where you go to this angry gray-haired man throwing bolts down from, I went into the depths of outer space and went into a state of cosmic consciousness where the awake mind within me was this perfectly still, beautiful, and infinite state of mind. And yet I was still aware of the cosmos. And at that point, two very enlightened beings approached me. And I was not in a body that looked like a physical body. I was just like a point of light. And so were they. And I had an extraordinary metaphysical experience, which defied everything I was raised to believe, with a God-type experience, God consciousness experience. And I went into a state of consciousness where there was this connection with these beings, where there was all kinds of knowledge and information conveyed non-verbally. It's like, if I say the word apple, it says apple. And inside that word, you can see visually in your sort of mind's eye, or astral world, if you will, the apple. This was even pre-visual. It was like the causal level. And there was this kind of experience, and it seemed to go on for an eternity because there's no sense of marking time in that state of consciousness. And I ultimately had a profound state of sort of oneness consciousness, where I saw the entire cosmos as an awake thing. Everything in it was consciousness, phasing and resonating as a star or what have you. Eventually, these two enlightened beings, these sort of twin, powerful, almost like avatar type beings, said, well, you may come with us or go back to Earth. And I said, well, I don't know, presence of mind said, well, what is your will and what should I do? And I'm a 17-year-old boy who was raised as totally an atheist. We were Unitarians, but we didn't believe in anything. And they said, well, we would like for you to go back to Earth to work on what you can do for Earth. And with that, I became very depressed, to be honest with you. I had no interest in coming. After that experience, I had no interest in being back. But I said, okay. And with that, I sort of fell back into my body. And after that, and there's a whole lot to this that I don't know if I need to go into, but I was sort of tested to see if my will to live. And I was almost drawn out of my body several times and eventually nailed it. and stayed there. And after that, I was spontaneously healed. I know I had hepatorenal syndrome and renal failure because my skeletal muscle was so damaged, my urine had become the color of Coca-Cola, and I was very sick. But I never did see a doctor, and after that got fine. And I then became very interested in exploring higher states of consciousness.
So you see where it all begins from. It begins from this encounter with these entities. I mean, it's a standard NDE. It's crazy because I've been following him for so long, but I never heard this account in full like this until I found this clip today. But it's your standard NDE. It's them getting him to want to go back, right? Kind of giving him the fake choice, but then nudging him to go back. Hey, well, what do you think I should do? Yeah, we want you to go back and finish your work, and you've got more work to do, just like they always say. They healed him. According to his story, they healed him. This obviously is going to give him great faith in everything that was said. I remember in my interview with Darius, it's kind of similar. He said that there were predictions made, and they all came true, and that was really powerful for him. And who am I to say, right? Again, I'm not the one that experienced it, so I'm sure it was very powerful for both of them to have this miracle happen. And when your back's against the wall. But I'm just saying, with everything we've talked about on this channel, with the broader context, it does seem to be one of these manipulations that we see, and then that leads him down the path of thinking everything that he experienced there was the absolute truth. And I think this is underneath everything that he does. I think it's exactly why he has these harsh stances, that it's all for us to grow and learn and spiritually evolve, and this is all for our benefit. Everything is positive. Everything is love. I think it all comes from this, and this is why everything is stated the way it is in his ideology and his framework of the way things work. And I don't think it all adds up. I wonder, I'm sure must have read Bob Monroe's books. I'm sure he's explored. He says he's so interested in consciousness. I'm sure he's learned about out-of-body experiences, but for whatever reason, I think the reason why he can't bring himself to acknowledge some of these areas in terms of the loosh extraction and the reincarnation loop and the reincarnation trap or whatnot is, I think, because this experience was so powerful and profound to him, and this would go against that he can't face it. I could be wrong. Maybe he's researched it, and maybe he's felt that he's been able to debunk it. Logically, I don't know, but that's kind of what I think. I think it's good for people to know this information if you followed Stephen Greer like I have, because he really has been instrumental in my journey. I got to where I am today in terms of all this information because he first blew my mind wide open to even the fact that ETs are out there and they're interacting with us, and there's all this technology that's been interacted, all this stuff. Like, if I wouldn't have gone down that path, I wouldn't have found myself here. So I have a lot of gratitude for Stephen Greer, but I do think it's important to be aware that there may be some things that he is incorrect on, I guess. Let's just put it like that. Still doing tremendous work, still doing very important work. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you guys think? Do you guys think what I'm saying makes sense? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.